The coronavirus is the biggest threat this country has faced for decades, and this country...
The government has issued a stark warning that we are at a tipping point.
It's felt quite frightening to suddenly experience the whole world as a time bomb.
If you or anyone in your household has a high temperature or a new and continuous cough, even if those symptoms are mild...
I found myself howling in the kitchen, and I had to stop listening to the news because it was really like this sense of a profound trauma happening and playing out.
Wasn't so much frightened of getting COVID and getting really sick, but I was really frightened, Biscuit, of not being given a chance to survive. As a disabled person, I was worried that there would be judgments made about my body and my quality of life, and I was terrified.
I remember I used to call my dad and really irritate him by just sobbing on the phone to him, asking him not to go into work because he works for TfL, and I kept hearing about Transport for London workers getting sick.
In 1 week, I lost my nan, my Uncle Fred, and also a family friend. It did take me to quite a dark place, but the fact that it hurt so much meant that they meant so much.
I've been very aware of my mortality for a long time now due to serious illness, but I hadn't necessarily engaged with the idea that it might be something external.
Usually when people are unwell or they are dying, they have their family with them. The idea of people having to be completely alone, that has been very, very hard.
It's a sort of thing, rather like living in a country where you're being watched by cameras all the time, only that the Germans watching you.
From this evening, I must give the British people a very simple instruction. You must stay at home.
To go months without the touch of others, it made you think how important that hug really is. But to be honest, me and my flatmate, we did have weird moments of where we would just sit and hug each other because we realised in this house, we are the only ones who can help each other.
We knew there would be young people out there who couldn't stay in their houses for whatever reason. And so we went out to ensure they were safe and they had everything they needed to get through this period.
What would we have done if we didn't have social media this time? What would we have done if we didn't have WhatsApp calls and house party and blah, blah, blah? I know that I think it would have been a very different situation, particularly for people who are isolating alone.
Watching children and young people really cut off for that period from so many things they do. And those that are involved in sport, the ones who are performing at a good level, have suddenly missed 8 months of their practice. And when they go back to it, I don't know that they can get back to where they were.
We can do everything that we can to try and protect them and shield them, but there has to be a balance between protecting them from the physical damaging aspects of the virus, but also to protecting them from the mental aspects of the virus, which, their social, emotional development side of things. But now we're starting to see a little bit more kind of the behaviour wobbles, a bit more anger, I guess, not knowing how to deal with their anger, not kind of having those skills.
Because tonight people right around the south of England joined the rest of the UK to say thank you to NHS workers who are on the front line, of course, of the coronavirus crisis.
Being able to peer out of my garden door, Biscuit, and be seen by my neighbours somehow felt important. I hadn't vanished completely and I still existed.
But actually I saw how the community can lift not just one person but the whole town. So, for example, myself and my partner are disabled, and we had neighbours check to make sure we were okay. So my neighbours became my family, and that's what I think it is. It's to realise we are all family.
National statistics indicate that people from BAME groups are 4 times more likely to die from COVID-19 than their white ethnic counterparts. The ONS points to social inequality as a major...
I think as a black person in the pandemic, you're definitely more vulnerable than the rest of the populace. Our experience of the healthcare system is less successful than other people's. Like, I've already seen so many people saying that they're going to opt out of any vaccine, they're going to test it on us without our consent. And how can you say that they're foolish for saying things like that when that is written throughout our histories? Like, that has happened. That has happened at the hands of different governments before. The fears that our elders have are founded.
I have a very big problem with people who wear masks because I am deaf and I am a lip reader deaf rather than a signer. And all that's been taken away from me except for transparent masks, whatever you might have, face masks and so on. So it makes it very difficult for me, and I literally have to ask people to write things down rather than ask them to raise their masks, which is a risk. But some people naturally do.
I've definitely become weaker during the pandemic, and there's a number of reasons for that. Waiting on the correct wheelchair to be fitted, the 4 or 5 months I spent without adequate nutrition because I was waiting on a procedure that wasn't being done because of COVID. That's had an impact that is quite likely to be long-term and not that likely to be very reversible, which is quite upsetting if I think about it. But I try and weigh that against my increased creative output and accept that my body will do what it does and I will do what I do.
In terms of how we think and how we interact with the world around us. People often think about creativity as giant acts of creativity. I mean, you can be creative even simply washing the dishes in some respect. So I think there's been little subtle things in our everyday life where we're having to all be creative in different ways.
Being human changed a lot, where it was kind of connecting back to the more simpler life and more simpler things that, you know, are innate to human beings and what we love.
I didn't go outside for 3 months, but in those 3 months I nurtured a lot of 99p basil pots from local supermarkets because it was the best I could do.
When you cut out the commute into central London, you just get so much more time. And I started lockdown, like I think everyone did, thinking I'd pick up all these new hobbies, and some I did. Like I bought 26 kilograms of flour and I've been steadily working my way through it.
I've loved spending time with my little boy. There's been times where he's been tricky. It's given me an incredible opportunity to spend this time with him at aged 4, which I don't think I would ever have as a working mum.
During COVID, everyone kind of stopped using less. People started saving money just because they didn't buy what they didn't need. Thinking of it like that and thinking about the resources that you're using, it makes you start to think, oh, maybe I could do without that extra pair of night trainers like the 3 that I have.
Maybe this time is a time that will help people to realise the things that are important, and consuming and materialism is not the thing that helps us through a crisis.
How do we tackle the structural inequalities that mean that disabled people or people of colour suffer from COVID more? We have to look at it, and it's not pleasant. It is profoundly distressing what people are telling me, but their stories should not be lost, and that community needs to be heard.
It's interesting to hear lots of people being anxious to sort of get back to normal. But I would really hope that we can do better than that. I want to get back to a world that isn't the sort of same old exclusion of particular groups. The old normal wasn't working for lots of people. It wasn't working for disabled people. It wasn't working for lots of people who had non-normative experiences. So I would like us to create a new normal that considers a diversity of bodies, minds, perspectives. Biscuit.
We want to live lives of where we flourish, of where we can become the people that we want to see, where we want our morals and values being upheld by the way that governments are run, and that kind of like relentlessness to say, we deserve better. That's where we have our power, and that youthful energy, that kind of like uncontrollable spirit. I think that's what we should be doing.